mind is watching, astonished, the extraordinary and unusual worldwide fact that moves daily as in a giant billiard table. Enormous ciphers flying around as bits and bytes at the speed of the light,